Tell us what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. So I'm Roger Johnson. I appreciate having me back again to speak talking about an issue that is important, I think, for criminal justice, and then especially dear for individuals who are nearing retirement and individuals such as Sheriff Carey. So my plan is today to talk about and urge support for Amendment 6. I'll talk a little bit about the history of the retirement systems and the lawsuit that got us where we are now, some of the resulting problems from that, and how Amendment 6 addresses the problems, and then address some common misconceptions. So first off, Missouri Sheriff's Retirement System was created in 1983 by statute and has been funded since that time by a $3 court fee. And it's a creature of statute. The retirement system is a statutory creation. The fee has funded the sheriff's retirement system since its inception, although more recently the sheriffs have had to pay into the retirement system, and so now they pay 4% of their salary into the retirement system. The prosecuting attorney retirement system was created in 1989, and like the sheriff's department, it was funded with a $4 court cost, a fee. But for sheriff's retirements, the counties also make contributions and members make contributions. And so I pay a certain amount into the retirement fund based on a percentage of salary. The sheriff's department, the time that they can vest in the system is shorter. For prosecuting attorneys, it's an all or nothing system, and so you don't vest in the system until you've served 3 terms. And so for me, it's really speculative about whether I would obtain the retirement. And so I'm mostly talking about how it affects the justice system, and then how it affects some of our local people. But in 2014, or maybe not, that's not the right year. I apologize. I didn't write down the year of the lawsuit. But so there's a lawsuit, 2 individuals who pled guilty to speeding in Kansas City and paid the court cost, sued challenging the constitutionality of the fee for the sheriff's retirement. The theory in the lawsuit is the Missouri Constitution. There's a provision that says courts are open to all people, and it says justice shall be administered without sale, denial, or delay. In prior cases addressing the constitutionality of court costs, the courts had interpreted that to mean that you could have court costs that are reasonably related to the expense of the administration of justice. And then there had been cases saying that paying for or funds that go towards the salary or benefits of executive department officials don't qualify as reasonably related to the expense of the administration of justice. So that was the lawsuit. Because of those prior decisions interpreting the language in the Missouri Constitution, the court decided that the sheriff's retirement fund, the funding mechanism coming from the court cost, was unconstitutional under the Missouri statute. The prosecuting attorney's retirement is being challenged in a lawsuit now that's still going through the system, and it's unclear if it would be the same result, but it seems like based on the reasoning and the opinion, it would be the same result. So ultimately the system had been in process and functioning for 40 years for the retirement, or for the sheriff's retirement, and 35 years for the prosecutor's retirement. The opinion says that executive department salaries aren't reasonably related to the expense of the administration of justice. Most of the other court costs are for court clerk, for the county, and then there are some other funds that are funded by court costs, such as the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. So the reason that created a problem is because of the solvency of the 2 retirement funds. So it's estimated that the sheriff's retirement fund will become insolvent in 9 years without a fix, and the prosecuting attorney's fund would become insolvent in 15 years. There are many sheriffs and prosecutors and their surviving spouses who are in the retirement plan, and that at this time is their only source of retirement. The way that the retirement for county employees works is the county employees all have membership in SERF, the County Employment Retirement Fund, except for elected officials aren't eligible for that fund. And so for most sheriffs and prosecutors, they don't have other retirement funds available. Sheriff Carey, for example, I believe his plans are to serve 2 more terms to finish some projects that he started there. And if the fund isn't corrected, he would retire after 43 years of service with no retirement. The other challenge for him and people in his position is that for all this time he's been working with the representation that he has this guaranteed retirement plan set up by statute, and then now it would become insolvent because of the loss of the fee. The statistics, the sheriffs have 200 retirees or surviving spouses who are currently receiving benefits, and there are 114 active sheriffs participating in the plan now and contributing 5% of their salary. If the amendment doesn't pass, despite the contributions, the fund will be bankrupt in 9 years. The prosecutors have 125 active members in retirement, and 90 of those are receiving benefits. And so there are 50 prosecutors who have vested in the system, but haven't started receiving benefits. Policy-wise, the main idea is that having a good retirement plan for prosecutors and sheriffs is an incentive for people to go into the field, and losing the retirement would be a pretty significant disincentive for people to either go into or stay in the field. What Amendment 6 does is it responds to the lawsuit by clarifying that the administration of justice, as interpreted by the courts, includes salary and benefits for sheriffs and prosecuting attorneys. It would essentially allow continuing to collect the fee that had been collected for 4 decades for sheriff's department. It doesn't create any new fee or increase any fees, but it allows collection of the fee that had already existed. In looking at the issue, there have been several misconceptions, and so I wanted to spend some time talking about the misconceptions. One of those is that it's not a new fee. The sheriff's retirement's been around, like I said, for over 40 years. The prosecuting attorney's retirement system has been around for 30 years. And this isn't a new fee or an increased fee. It's just a change in the Constitution that would allow continuing collecting the fee that already existed. The second thing, I've seen people saying that you can be arrested or jailed for non-payment of costs, and that's actually not true for any cost or fine in Missouri. That Missouri, by court rule, the judges have to find that before they could put you in jail for non-payment of a fine or a court cost, they have to find that you could pay the fee and you just choose not to do it, so that you're willfully failing to pay the fee. As a practice here, that the judges never even do hearings to make that inquiry, that if people aren't able to pay, either the judge waives the fee or the fee results in other collections, that nobody is incarcerated for non-payment of fees, even if they could pay and just choose not to. But by rule, nobody actually can be jailed for not paying a fine unless they could pay it. Other things here, that the judges here routinely waive fees for people who have been in custody in jail while the case was pending. And then by rule, they can waive the fee for anybody who has a hard time paying it. Locally, they've also got a program for people, in addition to payment plans for court cost, that they've got a plan for people to pay their fines by doing community service work in lieu of paying the fine. And so that's one misconception, is that people are suggesting that you could be arrested for not paying the $4 fee, and that's actually not true. In Missouri, that you can't be fined for non-payment of a fine if you're not able to afford to pay it. The next thing is, some people have been saying that it creates an incentive to arrest people in order to collect the fee, which is kind of absurd in my mind. The fee's been around for decades. And in all the time that I've been in criminal practice, I would tell you it's never even occurred to me to think, oh, we have to make sure this person is convicted because otherwise they won't pay the $4 retirement fee. It's just not something, as a practical matter, that has an effect on our decisions. But moreover, the fees are only collected when somebody's convicted. And so there has to have actually been an offense that somebody's convicted of. You can't just pick people up and have them pay the fee. The fee's only collected when a person's convicted of an offense. Another one, I think there was some discussion that it is a fee that targets the poor, which I discussed already, the implications of court costs and fines for indigent individuals. But for the court cost, everybody who is convicted of a criminal case and also in civil cases, they would be assessed the court cost. The largest volume of criminal cases across the state are traffic related, and it would be that's the largest volume of places where this where this cost comes from. And so everybody who is convicted of a traffic offense would pay the $4 into the sheriff's retirement fund. And then, as I indicated, that there's already a process for people who can't pay the fee to have alternatives, and they can't actually be jailed for non-payment of the fee. So that's a quick rundown of how we got where we are. And then overall policy reasons, I think it's hard for me to speculate about what I would do, but I could certainly say that it would be less attractive to be in the work that I'm doing now if there wasn't a possibility that I may be able to have a retirement at some point. The way the prosecutor's retirement is structured, it also creates an incentive for people to stick around for a while, because it's an all or nothing system that if you don't work to the point that you're vested, which requires at least 3 terms, which is a 12-year term, a 12-year total term, then you get nothing. And so it does encourage people to stay around. It takes a long time to build an institutional knowledge to be able to know how to be successful in prosecuting. And so we would lose that incentive. Also, I don't think people really know behind the scenes in the legal field that criminal practice, I think, is incredibly rewarding, especially as a prosecutor. But the trade-offs are from the pride and emotional benefits that we get from being prosecutors. The trade-off is salary benefits that in private practice, my colleagues who have been in private practice for the same amount of time as I've been in criminal practice now are making twice as much as I do. But some of the trade-off there, though, is they don't have the same benefits that we do, and that would include retirement, that they don't have any kind of retirement plan other than what they fund themselves. And so the main consideration in the retirement plan to me is that it helps us retain and recruit qualified individuals for the sheriff's and prosecutors' positions. I know at the sheriff's department, the current deputies are members of SURF, and there wouldn't really be a lot of incentive for them to leave SURF and become a sheriff when they would stop then accruing years of service for their SURF retirement and then not get any retirement as a sheriff. In some of the smaller counties, especially the counties where there are part-time prosecutors, even with our current system, they have a hard time recruiting people to fill the positions. And sometimes there's nobody within the county that will run to be the prosecutor, and the governor has to appoint somebody who's not in the county. So, like anything, a cut in benefits is a pay cut, and this would be a pay cut for the sheriffs and the prosecutors. So I know that was a really quick rundown. That was my goal, is to go quickly over it to leave some time for questions. And then I know Kathy Steinhoff is talking also. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and appreciate everybody's time for hearing me. And again, just encouraging people to vote yes on Amendment 6.
Okay, David Mallory has a question.
Yes, I've got a couple. First, you mentioned, have the number of arrests been reduced since this trial that did away with this thing? Because you mentioned that you didn't think it should have had any effect on it. Have the number of arrests changed in the last few years since this trial was settled?
So we don't necessarily see on our side the number of arrests. We do have records of the number of referrals that we get. And the number of referrals that we've gotten is mostly flat over time, over the last couple of years. And so I haven't seen any decrease. I do think, and we had a budget meeting this morning to talk, and when we kind of look at these numbers as part of the budget process, I suspect that the numbers would be larger and the trend would have continued upwards, except for staffing issues at the Columbia Police Department. I think that's resulted in fewer referrals for prosecution. But if you look historically at the referrals that we've gotten, it declined some from 2008, and then it went back up just before COVID, and it's been roughly flat since then.
Let me ask, does the money that is raised here stay in Boone County or does it go into a statewide pool?
It goes into a statewide pool. So the funds from all over the state go into a pool, and then there's a board that operates the sheriff's retirement fund and a separate board that operates the prosecutor's retirement fund.
Yeah, I mean, it helps because I don't believe anybody locally would step up the arrest to make more money, but they're obviously having cases like Ferguson and numerous speed traps where that has been an incentive.
One big difference, I think, in Ferguson and those type of the municipal traffic enforcement is for those courts, that was really their only source of funds was from traffic enforcement. And so there's been work over time to try to reduce the incentive that municipal courts have to enforce traffic in order to raise money for themselves. The fee for individual criminal cases is so low that it doesn't seem like it would be, to me, I'm not sure it would encourage anybody to think, oh, I need to make sure I arrest people so that they pay $4 into the fund.
Okay. Sue or Herb?
Oh,
Okay, Dave, did you have another comment?
I had another question, and that was, have court costs been reduced by this amount since the trial? You said $4 and $3, and so court costs have actually gone down, or is that the court costs the same and they're just being allocated differently now?
That would be a good question. So the prosecutor's fee is still in litigation, and so that case hasn't finalized. I would have to look. I don't think actually court costs have gone down, but if they did, it would have been by $4. It's been a little while since I looked into exactly what the local court costs are. They vary based on type of offense, and so circuit court costs are one level, misdemeanor court costs are one level, traffic cost even vary depending on what type of offense it is. So it's fairly complicated to figure out and there's a schedule you can tell what they'll be, but I'd have to look and see for sure.
Okay. Herb?
It's gonna be Sue.
It's Sue, okay.
Question. Mine are kind of short ones, and one is, I take it that sheriffs and prosecuting attorneys do get Social Security. This is a retirement system on top of that. Am I not correct?
Right. So this would be that we would be accruing Social Security service, but this would be for the sheriffs and prosecutors. It's a pension plan.
Okay. That's what I want to clarify. And there is a pension plan for county workers, right?
Right.
So did that go in after these other two systems were already in, or vice versa? I mean, why were they not put in on the county system?
So I don't know exactly why, because when it happened was early 80s, and so I wasn't around at that time, and so don't know policy wise why they chose to do that. One of the challenges, I know some people have asked, why wouldn't we just move the sheriffs into the SURF system? The difficulty with that is the way SURF works as well. You accrue years of service, and sheriffs under the SURF rules aren't accruing any years of service because they're not in that plan. And so if you have somebody like Sheriff Carey, who's close to retirement age, he doesn't have enough time I guess he would, if he serves 2 more terms, he could vest in the SURF plan, but he wouldn't have accrued any years of service for all that time that he worked as a sheriff. And the current sheriffs who are already retired, or the surviving spouses who are already retired, it would be too late for them to accrue years of service, and eventually their retirement would disappear as the plan runs out of funds.
Dave Taylor had a question on chat. Are there any provisions for public defenders?
Are there any what?
Provisions for public defenders. How does that work with them?
So the public defender employee, their retirement system works similar to other county employees, that they're state employees, and so they're under the state retirement plan.
Herb had a question too.
Okay.
I'm looking at this as if it was something designed by Rube Goldberg. Are there county officials who are outside, elected county officials who are outside of the county retirement fund?
So that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure how the other county employees, how the other elected county officials' retirement systems work. I've only myself been involved in the prosecutor side of things, and then I know a little bit more now about the sheriff's side based on talking with Sheriff Carey and looking at things related to Amendment 6. I don't know if the other county elected officials are SURF eligible or not. My guess is I'd hate to speculate.
Well, my question is, why the heck are prosecuting attorneys and
Sheriffs.
sheriffs special by comparison with those who work on roads, power plants, whatever else is done? What makes you so special that you deserve this item, that you're worth so much more than others, if that is the case?
So I guess it's not exactly the case, because right now we're just not eligible for that retirement system. And so it could be that we would make future prosecutors and future sheriffs eligible for the SURF retirement system. But as the statute is written now and has been, we're not eligible for that system. And so sheriffs like Sheriff Carey, for example, he's been sheriff now for over 20 years. During all of that time, his SURF plan is frozen, so he's not accruing any years of service in the SURF plan, with the theory that he has this other retirement plan available to him. I believe that the sheriff's and prosecutors' retirement plans were developed because it was a way to try to incentivize people to move into those positions. That for larger counties, the work as a sheriff or prosecutor is less competitive because you can make more in the private sector. In smaller counties, they have a hard time finding people sometimes to fill the positions, just because it's harder to draw people into those communities to work in those sectors. In the legal field, in some of the smaller counties, there just aren't as many attorneys. So I think that was the policy behind setting up the separate system at the time, was that they wanted to have an incentive to bring people into the field when they had difficulty doing that. The challenge for fixing it now by moving prosecutors and sheriffs into the SURF system would be that it leaves all the people in the middle out of retirement, that the people who are currently retired in the sheriff system or prosecutor system would be out of luck in that plan.
And are your plans better than what SURF is? Do you get a better return than what SURF gets?
So it's hard to say really better. If you worked for the county for the way that the SURF plan works, you accrue years of service up to 20 years, and then you accrue at a decreased rate up to 25 years. And I've never done the math to compare whether one is more than the other. My guess is that probably, if you looked at it, the sheriff's and prosecutor's retirement is probably better, because you vest in it, and so the years of service that you need to fully vest are lower than what you'd need for another county position.
Interesting.
Indeed.
Huh. Because many times the investment is 5 or 10 years.
For county employees in SURF, that you vest in 8 years, and then there's a benefit formula that determines what your benefit would be, and that's tied to years of service. And so you vest at 8 years, but your benefit in SURF is very low until you accrue maximum years of service. For the prosecutors and sheriff's pension, the sheriff's pension, I believe, works the same way. It's all or nothing. Once you vest, you're vested. Until you vest, you don't get any benefits.
Are all of the prosecutors in your office and all the employees in your office under SURF?
All of the employees except for me are under SURF, and I was under SURF as an assistant, and so I'm vested in the SURF plan, but I don't accrue years of service anymore for that, because the same thing for Sheriff Carey. My SURF now is really frozen because I'm still a county employee, so you can't roll it over into a new retirement plan, but you're not eligible to be a member of that system anymore.
And that would probably be the same for all of the deputy sheriffs and the employees in the sheriff's department.
Right. Yeah. The deputy sheriffs are also SURF employees.
Clarification quickly. My poor little mind is getting confused here. And it's probably because I'm just not smart enough. The other administrative officials for the county that are elected, and we got a bunch of them, are those parties who are elected county officials in the SURF retirement system or not?
I don't know that. And so it's not because of, I can't imagine it's because of lack of ability to understand. It's my communication, I think. I don't actually know the answer to that. I could find out. But if they are, their retirement system would function differently, because part of the issue in the sheriff and prosecutor retirement is that it's tied to the administration of justice. And so the idea is they're collecting a fee as part of the court cost, because the court costs go to various aspects of administration of justice. The courts determined that executive functions aren't tied to the administration of justice, and so that they could still use court costs to pay for things like the clerk's office, but they can't use it to pay for things like the sheriff's retirement. The other county employees would not be, their work is not related to the court system or the administration of justice. And so I don't know if they're SURF or not, but if they are not, their retirement systems wouldn't be related to a court fee.
But is SURF your retirement system, the retirement system of your employees, or is that the county's retirement system? I'm getting
SURF is for all county employees in the state. And so there are different retirement funds or different retirement plans for different employees. And so there's a Mosers for the Missouri State Employee Retirement System. There's SURF for county employees. There's loggers for local area government employees. And so there are different retirement funds, and SURF is the retirement for all county employees other than elected, at least elected prosecutors and sheriffs.
Now,
Okay, and then
for
I
the-
saw
for
somebody.
the administration of justice, we pay for the judges and all of the other court personnel out of regularly appropriated funds, and they come under retirement plans of some sort, right?
So they do, but the clerk's office and other parts of the court system are also funded through court costs. And then I got a message from somebody who sounds like they know more. They said that the county clerk, assessor, and collector are not SURF eligible, and that SURF is just the county employee retirement fund. And so I'm not exactly sure how the other elected officials' retirement works, but it's not. It wasn't, their retirement wasn't subject of the litigation.
Yeah, that's just my understanding. I'm not a lawyer, and my understanding is that the elected county officials elected at our county level don't participate in the SURF.
And it looks
All
like
their
we're running,
employees do, just like yours do.
right? Yeah. It looks like we're getting close to the end of the time. Does anybody have other questions, or if you want to ask about anything related
Dave
to
Mallory.
prosecutor work?
One other question that I understand correctly, the court costs are only levied if the person who's charged is found guilty. Is that correct? And if so, you said a high percentage, like 80% of these people brought before the court are for traffic violations. It sounds like, if by some miracle the people start paying attention to the law, we have fewer people brought in, will that then adversely affect your retirement?
It would, but part of the difficulty, I think, with that analysis is until this lawsuit, it never even occurred to me that that would be something that we would want to do, because the individual contribution to the fund is so small that it just wouldn't have ever occurred to me that, hey, we need to make sure people pay the fee to make sure that that's going into the retirement fund. And I can't imagine that it would affect law enforcement either. On their side, they can't even do anything unless there's probable cause to arrest somebody. And so if it's an incentive to enforce existing laws, I'm not sure that that's necessarily a bad incentive.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I think it helps to clarify a very complicated situation. And, you know, I know this is regressive, but then funded statewide through your tax system is also regressive. So I appreciate the efforts that our system is doing to make it a little bit less so in terms of when court costs are not administered. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all again for having me here. And if you've got other things that I could help talk about, I'm always happy to help out. And I'll stick around to listen to Kathy Steinhoff and be available if anything else comes up.
Okay. And with that, we're going to switch it over to Kathy. And do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us about your campaign, as it were, and other items that are of interest.
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Kathy Steinhoff. I'm the state representative for the 45th District. That is Central Columbia mostly. And I am running for re-election this fall, but I am very blessed that I do not have an opponent. So I have my campaign's going very well. I know that was one of the things you asked me to talk about. I see a path to victory, but my first time that I ran, I spent a lot of time knocking doors in my district because I wanted to understand what I was getting into, and I wanted to understand what the needs of my constituents were. This time I have spent more time kind of helping other candidates. So I have been around the state. I've gone to Springfield, Kansas City, and St. Louis to try to knock doors in some areas. Two things that I prioritized: seats that were either we needed to save or close to flipping. And the other thing I focused on were people that were either educators or very focused on education as a prime issue, because as those of you that know me know that is my passion. I want to follow up. I think Roger did a fantastic job explaining that retirement amendment. I do want to say a couple of things, though, that adding to that. I am on the pensions committee in the House, and this is not ideal. You know, a lot of the questions that you all had were really founded in, like, you know, is the retirement system a bad idea? That is not at issue here. What's at issue here is that we lost our funding source. So there's no question about how the retirement system is being run, whether it should overlap with a different retirement system. None of that has been concerns. The concern is that we need money. And so when you think about those of you that know about retirement systems, they are very triggered by any little changes on the beginning or the end. You know, you increase the benefit, then you're going to have problems if you don't increase the contributions. If you increase the contributions, it's a very fine balance, and your fund can get in trouble really quickly when your investments aren't sound, or you have a board that's not acting in the best interest of the fund. So the big thing is, where do we get the money from? I would agree that this is not the ideal place to find that money. However, with Missouri the way it is, it's the practical place to find that money. And it's practical in the sense that, like I will tell you, the only group that I have found that has publicly come out against Amendment 6 is the NAACP. It makes sense to me why they would, because we know that people of color are disproportionately, stopped for traffic stops, accused of crimes, sometimes found guilty when later, many years later, we find that they're not. So I totally understand that. This is also, as Roger said, this is a $4 fine, and it's only if they're found guilty. And it has worked for the past 40 years. So that's where I see it's the practical answer to it. If you're curious what's been going on the last couple of years, the state has come in. I believe they put in $5 million into this fund. I think it was 2 years ago, and then last year they put in another. And they don't want to keep putting money in the fund. I firmly believe that if this doesn't pass, they're going to say, sheriffs, you got to find another way to do this. But we need to keep in mind that these are public servants. They are not paid a lot, and their retirement fund is a form of deferred compensation. So if we are not paying for it at the state level, then what happens is counties are having to pay for it, and many counties can't afford it. We think about Sheriff Carey. He's in a very different position than most of the sheriffs around the state. So that, I mean, a lot of sheriffs around the state probably couldn't even stop enough people if they wanted to fund their own retirement system. So this is contributing to the sheriffs for all of Missouri to make sure that they can retire when their time comes, as they were promised when they were hired into that job. And I think Roger did a great job of talking about some of the things that people are advertising as reasons to vote against it. I think that we need to remember we have to trust people to do their jobs with integrity. And when we find they're not doing that, that's when we need to take action. But to assume that they would be disingenuous and start stopping people just to fund the retirement system, I think it's a bad way to look at how we're doing things. And I think that some people are really kind of blowing that out of proportion when there's not evidence to go off of that as happening in the past. So I thought I just out. And then there was one more thing I don't remember Roger mentioned, but another thing that I have heard about this is that some people are saying that if we pass this amendment, it would give the courts an opportunity to just raise fees. Like right now it's $4, but what stops them from making it $60? Well, the sheriffs would not be allowed to do that. It would have to go through legislation or county approval in order to change any of those fees. I think it'd have to go through legislation, and maybe Roger, if he's still here, maybe he could validate that, because I think it is a state issued fee for this.
Yeah,
Roger,
that's correct. It's a statutory, the statute sets the fee.
Yeah, so so I just thought I'd add those things in there. I don't know if you have any other questions about Amendment 6, or if we want to talk about Amendments 2 or 3, or if you want to ask me about my campaign. What order do you want to go in here?
Well, why don't we hear about the other amendments that you care about?
Okay, I think 2 and 3, I believe, were the ones that you guys that asked me to look at. Hopefully I got that right. So I did jot down some notes about 2. I think 2 is a tricky one to remind you, this is the one about sports betting. So I would say that I have gone back and forth on this one myself many times. When I got out of session, I was ready to vote for Amendment 2 because I'm really worried about our state's revenue. You know, we are right now in a supermajority of Republicans who love to cut taxes every chance they get. They love to give out tax credits. We've been coming off of a time where we had a lot of federal money that was helping pad our budget, and I'm worried the times ahead are going to be rough. As I stated before, I'm very passionate about public education. We just passed a massive Senate bill that will throw so much money into public education. It will be great, but I don't believe for a second the Republicans are really going to do it. So, and they're going to claim they don't have enough money because our revenues will be shrinking, and that concerns me. So the beginning, I thought I'm just going to vote for it because it's more revenue. I was willing to stomach the fact that they are lying to us again. When they say it's going to put more money into education, is not, here's the key word, it's not going to put more money into education. The money will only be able to be spent on education. However, all that means is they take general revenue away. And then that makes it harder to try to get that general revenue back into education because they found another place to spend it, or they found another tax cut to give. But they've done this with lottery. They've done it with casino, riverboat gambling. It's the same lie that they're doing over and over again. The money does go to education, but it's not more money. It just replaces what was already there. A couple other things to consider is currently all of our border states, except for Oklahoma, allow sports betting. So there's a lot of speculation that people are just driving to Illinois or to Kansas to bet. I would imagine if you live in St. Louis or Kansas City, there probably is a lot of that going on. And that why not keep that revenue back in the state of Missouri? Also, 38 other states have already approved sports betting. So there's a lot of things about that that don't concern me as much. However, I have started to kind of go back to the fact that we, at some point, we need to tell people quit lying to us. And so maybe that idea that they keep using education as their poster child for this to try to get this to pass maybe there's a point at which we say no. Some other things to kind of keep in mind is there's a lot of people that, you know, just opposed to gambling. They think it's bad for our society. The thing about this is we know gambling is addictive for some people. This type of gambling is even more so because it's partnered with the addiction to technology. So the fact that if, you know, people can do this, they can sit on their phone and just gamble away money on sports teams that they love so much. You know, they're not just looking at, you know, some computer generated thing that they're sitting in a casino anymore. Now they're sitting in their own home. That is kind of a frightening thing to think about. So a lot of those things have started to make me be a little bit more hesitant with this. I would give you a little background as well. This has been trying to be passed through the legislature for the past many years. They are very, very strong lobbyists in favor of this, people with very, very deep pockets. They've contributed to lots of campaigns. They have been given promises. I thought the first year I was in Jeff City, it was going to pass because everyone pretty much said it was going to pass because they had enough votes. It did. Then the second year, again, everybody, we're going to start this off at the beginning of the year. We're going to get this to pass. Here's what the hangup is that there are politicians that are trying to tie it to the gray machines, the video lottery terminals that are technically illegal in our state, but nobody's really doing anything about it. So we have a few politicians that they're powerful enough that they won't let sports gambling pass through unless we tie the VLTs to it. And then there's also a lot of other politicians that don't want to mess with those gray machines. And I'm happy to tell you more if you need more about that, but just to give you an idea, that's what's kind of been the holdup in the legislature. Because we've had a holdup in the legislature this year, the proponents of sports betting said, you know what, we're just going to take it to the people. We're going to put an amendment for people to look at. But as soon as they did that, they no longer have to negotiate the terms of sports betting in our state. They were able to write it all into the amendment. So the 10% tax rate will be one of the lowest in the nations on this sort of thing. I mean, some states are as high as almost, I think they're like at 45%, some of the highest ones. They also wrote in some provisions that allow them to deduct a lot of their revenue, like the payouts get to be deducted, the advertising is to be deducted. So that tax rate is only on a certain amount. They're saying that it will generate about $29 million per year, of which 5 would go to people with gambling addictions. And then the other, 24 would go to schools. But if you look closely at the language, it also says that the anticipated revenue is between 0 and 24. We expect, I think the reason the 0 is in there is because they're not sure how much they're going to be able to deduct off of their revenues the way that the language has been written. So it does make me wonder if this fails, then they will probably come back to the legislature to try to pass it again, which would give us the opportunity to try to make it, if at least it passes, that it's more advantageous to Missourians. To give you an idea, looking at my notes here, some of the supporters, all of the major teams are supporters, but it's also important to understand that written in the legislation, you would be able to gamble on your phone this way in a casino or in let me back up. Places can get licenses to allow you to do this in their facility. And it's casinos that can qualify for the licenses and our major sports teams. So that just means that's why the Chiefs and the Cardinals would be interested in this, because it would give them a chance to increase their revenue as well. The opposition is stacking up pretty hot. So we've got, let's see. I tried to look up a couple. AFL-CIO is come out against this. Missouri AFT, that's the American Federation of Teachers, have come out against this. Some other things that I should point out is that when you think about the way that this is, the type of gambling this is, it's not going to create any new jobs because it's all technology driven. So unless like a casino ends up putting one area of their casino devoted to this and hires somebody, that's like the only jobs that could be created by this. So people that will say they're not against somebody's right to do what they want to do, so that's why they're going to vote for it. They need to also understand that they are giving way to some corporations that are making billions of dollars off this, and they're not sharing very much with Missouri in return for doing that. I think I have all my notes shared, but I'm sure there's questions and probably maybe there's some in the chat.
I understand a lot of the opposition funding is coming from the casinos that are looking at this as competition.
Oh, really?
That's what Rudy Keller said. He did a workshop at the library last week about the amendments.
Okay. I do know that there's a new PAC that was opened up in opposition, but I don't know who's contributed to that PAC, so it could be those groups.
Sue or Herb?
Both of us. Go ahead, you first.
As our fount of wisdom, Kathy, source of knowledge of the obscure, can you give us an estimate of how much legal gambling, that is reported gambling, there is in Missouri? The Center for Gambling Studies at Harvard published the estimate nationally that it amounts to 5% of the gross domestic product.
I'm going to trust you on that. Herb, you sound like the fountain of wisdom right now. I don't know that answer.
We are in bad shape if we say that.
I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I was gonna say, you know how they come up to you and ask you to sign a petition to get it on the ballot, and they spoke only of the education, nothing about the gambling. They only spoke about the education. And I initially signed it, but then I thought about or looked more closely. I was in a rush, and so I hadn't taken the care I usually do. I crossed my name off. And then what I noticed with other people, because frequently there was somebody at the library or multiple people at the library, they got to the point they knew I was against it, so they never approached me again. But they were going up to people and again, only speaking about education. So to me, they got it on the ballot falsely. That's where, and that's what really bothers me. And they paid to have the people working. It wasn't that they were volunteers.
Mm-hmm. And Sue, I don't know if you remember, but I recall that they were wearing shirts that said teachers deserve more money. But I couldn't remember if it was Amendment 2 people or if it was the Amendment 5 people that were wearing those shirts.
I think that I can't recall either.
Yeah, I mean, they're both gambling issues. And what's frustrating to me is that we have so many people talking about teachers deserve more money. I mean, I'm one of those people. But what many politicians won't tell you is that there's no mechanism right now in our budgeting to be able to give teachers more money. Because they're paid by their local school districts. And local school districts get money from us for their foundation formula funding. That is a per student thing. And then the district decides how much to pay their teachers based on what they get from the state and federal and what they get local. So it very much frustrates me when I hear my colleagues talk about how they support paying teachers more, but they never offer any kind of legislation that gives an avenue for the budget to give money to teachers. So if the way that this amendment is written, it does not create an avenue to be able to give teachers money. You know,
and I will also say I worked on the 1/10 of a cent sales tax way back multiple times. It came up. It has to be renewed every 10 years. For that's for it's for soil, and it's not conservation. It's soils and parks.
Okay.
And what has now happened to state parks is it was supposed to be extra funds for state parks. Now, what has happened to state parks is they don't get any general revenue. All they get is a 1/10 of a tenth. So that's exactly, it's just shuffling things around without really serving what the public probably wants.
Right. Especially if you look at how we prioritize the money that we bring in. If we really prioritize education, our general revenue would be paying for education. And right now there's a large portion of it that's being paid by lottery funds and by casino funds. But I don't think the right idea is to keep increasing more opportunities for gambling in order for us to educate our children. So I think a big thing to say is if you're thinking about voting in favor of 2 because you want to help schools, you need to rethink that. You need to put that out of your mind, because this is not going to help our schools. It's not going to help our teachers. So then you just need to decide whether you think people should be able to do online betting and under the conditions that are presented in this amendment. I will say that as a representative, and I'm hoping that this fails, and then anticipating that we will see some legislation on it in the fall or in the spring, I'm going to be probably having to find a way to survey my constituents to find out if they voted no on this because they don't want the gambling, or if they voted no because they wanted different conditions around the gambling. Because I want to make sure that I vote along the lines of what my constituents believe. And I think just a yes or a no, it's going to be hard to tell.
Okay. Did you want to go into another amendment?
Well, the next one I have on my list is Amendment 3, and Amendment 3 is the one that would restore abortion access in the state of Missouri. I think that the issue here at hand is a very, very personal one. The reason that I'm going to be supporting it is because of the fact that it is so personal that it should not be the rest of us judging what somebody is doing. Whether it comes to reproductive health care or just health care in general, being able to put a blanket law out there that says we're going to deny a certain type of medical procedure for a group of people, I think is wrong. Right now we have, sorry about that, my computer almost fell over. We're hearing, it's really started to come out in the last maybe 3 weeks or so. We're hearing a lot of the people that want a no on Amendment 3. What I don't like, of course, is that I feel like they're telling lies. They're taking the words of this amendment and they're twisting it around. They're making it about gender affirming care. And if you really read the amendment, it mentions nothing at all about gender affirming care or gender reassignment surgeries. They're trying to make this into something it's not. They continue to say things about abortion after birth. I'm not even, it just, it blows my mind, some of the things that I hear in terms of this. But it is basically restoring the right for women to receive the health care that they need. I'm sure many of you have heard some stories about how it's actually what's happened in the past since Roe was overturned. What's happened is one side has expanded their definition of what an abortion is. And if you were to ask people about, many of us here are older, but when you think about when we were having our children and we had friends that were having children and we knew that they were having complications in their pursuit to have children. And many of these procedures that lots of women had done, now they're calling abortion procedures. And that is making it really dangerous that they're going beyond what, they're going beyond the group that they're trying to attack. And they're just hurting so many people. I'm probably too passionate about it to speak very clearly on it. But the other thing that I want to say when it comes to Amendment 3 is that if you, like me, are committed to it passing, you need to remember that there will be a tax if it passes. The legislature will try to limit it or reverse it. And the best way we have of really hearing the voices of the people is to make sure that we have as many Democrats as possible. And Crystal Quaid would be a great one to have up there to be able to protect however this amendment falls.
Sue or Herb?
What I want.
You vote on.
Okay. I just want to say I had a DNC in the 70s before there were helicopters, and I would not be here if that law had been in place.
Following was made.
Because I was bleeding so profusely, there was no way I could get out of state and still live. Get for 2 hours of driving.
Sue, I'm sorry that happened, that had to happen, and thank you for being brave enough to share that with us. But I think your point is very important. There are so many women out there who know the term DNC and they don't understand that our current ban includes a DNC as an abortion. And that's what I mean by this idea of what an abortion is expanded. And some of the people that are voting no on 3, the people who want our current abortion ban to stand, don't understand that. They don't realize that we're fighting for reproductive health care, and not just what they picture in their mind as a late-term abortion. That's what they think everybody is talking about, and that's not what everybody's talking about. David, did you have a
Alice?
question?
Yeah, when I was collecting signatures on Amendment 3, one of my most significant interactions was right outside my door because I did my neighborhood. There was a woman with a baby strolling it with her husband. The baby was about 6 months old. And the woman signed immediately. And the husband said, well, I don't sign these things. You know, you can have her signature. And I said, well, you realize if your wife was hemorrhaging when she was carrying this baby, one of them might not have lived. And the wife said, yes, that was my biggest fear. The husband signed immediately. It was a really significant interaction. And those are some of the things I haven't canvassed on this. I've been working on other stuff for the election that I just think are so important to reach out there. The health impact for the mother and the baby is if they're carrying a child. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I felt like it was really significant.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you.
David?
Yes, Kathy, since you brought it up, please scare us a little bit about what the legislature can do against the voice of the people, say Amendment 3 were to pass, or the situation of same-sex marriages, or marijuana laws and legal expungement. I mean, are there forces in the Missouri legislature that think that they can really get a reversal of progress?
Absolutely.
How will they do it?
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I haven't been there to see them do it, but we know from the past that they've done it, right? How many times has our state had to do right to work? How many times has our state had to do Clean Missouri? The things pass, and then they say, oh, public didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't understand what this amendment is. One of the easiest ways for them to do it is to send it back to the people again, which is what they've done many times. So it could be that if we pass Amendment 3, there could be another amendment that we are having to vote on the next cycle that basically is saying, probably changing the wording a little bit, making it a little trickier. And you know that because it seems like every amendment that comes from the legislature is worded poorly. A good one is the ranked choice voting, where the very first thing is only no illegal immigrants or whatever, you know, only citizens of America can vote, which is a law anyway. So they're going to try to come back and have us vote on it again, and they're going to make the wording very tricky and use a lot of ballot candy. I think that would be the first thing that they would do. I think the other thing that they would do is they would get some really fancy lawyers to really study that language and think about how they can restrict us as much as possible still within the within the lines of that language. You know, like for instance, fetal viability is in there, but it's not clearly defined, you know. So if you start letting legislators decide what their definition of fetal viability is, it'll be interesting. Their definition doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor's definition, so they could potentially change that definition in our state law.
Any final comments or questions for Kathy? From personal experience, an unopposed election is always the most fun campaign. So congratulations.
Kathy, thank you for helping other candidates and working around the state. That's cool.
Well, it's a little selfish too. I want some more Democratic votes in the House.
Yeah, absolutely. We understand.
And thank you, Kathy, for helping Adrian. I know you've been canvassing for Adrian, which is exciting.
I think Adrian's in good shape. He's had a lot of help, and that's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for our regular meeting, and
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Very interesting.